Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Tom Young, and in today's presentation, I'm going to walk you through getting started with your first Neo system and building services in the Neo System Designer. If you're watching live today, you're welcome to ask questions. You can use the Q&A button and just type your questions into chat. If I can answer them as a part of what we're doing, I will. Otherwise, we'll come back to it at the end. Today's lesson or tutorial should take about 35, maybe 40 minutes. I also want to go ahead and point out the intercom button at the lower right corner of most of our web pages, including the System Designer. If at any point you have a question or a problem or something isn't making sense during this webinar or while you're using the System Designer, just go ahead and click that button and someone will be happy to answer your question. I really mean that. We got very smart people on the other end of that button and they can't wait to help you out. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to build a system for our city libraries. Let's imagine that our city's libraries are split up into a couple local branches, and there's also a central headquarter type branch. And all of these local branches are going to be running a Neo instance locally, and each of those Neo instances is going to have several services on it. Services we can think of as being programs or applications that are actually executing and processing data at each library and at the central headquarters. Now, I mentioned that we're going to be running services on these instances, and services look like and function a whole lot like flowcharts. For example, this flowchart I made here roughly represents the workflow that our local library branches are expected to follow. So this flowchart begins at the top where somebody submits some forms. This would be the application form that you have to fill out to get a new library card or to renew your library membership, as the case may be. And the local branch is expected to do two things with every form they receive. They're expected to count some statistics on the left of the screen here, and then they are to send those statistics off to a central headquarter branch who's going to do some kind of record keeping of individual branch performances. And then on the right side of this flowchart, we see another logical path where we're going to check to see if the application, the form that we just received, is a new member or if they were renewing their library card. If they are new, I want to go above and beyond here, and I want to make sure that I schedule an orientation. I get someone to take them on a tour of our very nice local library branch. So this workflow right here, it's not all inclusive. There might be other processes that would have to happen in addition to this, but for today, this is what we're going to focus on, just moving the information around so that we can take action on it. So I think that will do for introductions. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to open up my System Designer here. At the lower right, we can see the intercom button I mentioned before. Again, I can't emphasize enough that if you have any questions at all, go ahead and hit that button day or night and somebody will help you out. So what we see here is the System Designer. I'm assuming that you've already signed up in the portal and you've made it at least this far. Again, if for any reason you can't do that, just go ahead and hit the blue button. Somebody will help you out. But the first thing we need to do is define a system. As I mentioned before, the system is going to be made of all of our individual local branches. And each of these local branches, including the headquarters, are going to be able to talk to each other using PubKeeper, which is running in the background, and it's going to broker some secure and encrypted communications directly between all of our branches that need to talk to each other or that need to talk to headquarters. So let's go ahead and create our new system. Down at the lower left of my screen here, I just click the plus button, and all I need to do is give it a name. So let's call it Libraries. We'll click Accept. And the new system is created. We can see on the left that now I have another vertical menu here. And next I'm being prompted to create an instance. This is going to be one instance for each of my local branches. So to start things out, let's start with the north branch of my local libraries. Let's go ahead and type in a name and accept. And it's going to go ahead and spin up my new cloud instance. In reality, this would probably happen on local instances running at the local branches, but for the sake of demonstration today, I'm just going to be using cloud instances. So now that we are inside our north branch system, instance, we need to begin creating services. And that's what this screen in the center is explaining to us. Before we actually dive into that, let's take a look at the let's go ahead and create our first service. From our flowchart, we know that we need to accept applications as people come in and fill out their forms and turn them in. That's basically where our process begins. So the first thing I want to do is I'm actually going to want to build a service that handles these applications. So I'm going to click Create Service across the top of my screen here, and we're going to name this Form Handler because I expect it to handle all of my new forms. And now we are at the system view. I'm sorry, the service view. And from here, we can see across the top, we have some new controls to control our service. We also have what are called breadcrumbs. So we can see our current service, Form Handler, is a part of the instance. North branch is a part of the system libraries. If I want to jump up to other levels, I can click, for example, the instance out of my breadcrumbs here. And that will take me back to the instance view where I can see the single service that we just created. And from a menu on the left, I can jump right back to our new service. Also at the service view, you may have noticed that the block library is now visible on the right side of the screen over here. And at the top, it has 3 tabs. We have it available, installed, and configured. From the installed tab, we can see that we already have some blocks installed on this new instance for us. That's pretty convenient. And in fact, we're going to start with one of these blocks here. I want to begin with a counter interval simulator. Unlike a real library, I don't have someone to fill out forms and hand them to me today, so I'm going to have to actually simulate the data. And the counter interval simulator is a pretty good tool for that. So I'm going to just drag it out into the center area here that we call the canvas. And let's give this block a descriptive name for what it's going to be doing. The name doesn't actually tell the block what to do. It's for my own purposes, so I know what I'm doing here. It's kind of like a comment. So I want to generate ID numbers. This counter interval simulator, the name is a little bit involved. What it's explaining is that I just double click the block to open the configuration. Every interval, which I configure across the top here, right now it's 1 second. I'm going to change that to 3 seconds. Every interval of 3 seconds, this block is going to simulate or generate a new signal. And I want that new signal to have an attribute in it called ID. And I want the value of ID to count, which is why this is the counter interval simulator. So this little area here for simulated value, I can set up the rules by which it counts. We'll come back to this in a minute. For now, let's just get it set up. So I'm going to start with the number 0. I want to count by ones all the way to 2. And this final field at the bottom, total number -1, that means continue doing this forever. So the behavior that we've just configured is every 3 seconds, we're going to get a new signal with a different value for ID. That value is going to go 0, 1, 2, and then repeat. And it should do that forever. So let me go ahead and click Accept to save the block configuration. And in order to see this data that we're generating, I really have to create a logger. If I were to start this service right now, I wouldn't see anything happening. Even though the block is doing work, I would have no way to know that. So again, from our Installed Blocks tab in the block library, I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to find my logger block. The way the logger works is every signal it receives, it will display on our logger panel here. So let me just show you. I'm going to drag out the logger onto our canvas, give it a new name. For this one, I'm going to call it logger A. We're going to have a logger B later, so I'm going to just name it logger A for now. And you'll notice these 2 blocks each have a dot on them. This is the output of the simulator block, and this is the input of the logger block. So for every event, every set of signals that the simulator generates, it's going to tell all blocks connected to its output about that, right? It's going to hand the logger the signal it just generated. So all I have to do is connect these together. I need to come up to the top menu bar. I can click Save to save the service configuration. And now that I've saved the service configuration, when I click Start, the simulator block is in effect sending signals to our logger block. So let me go ahead and show you that. Click Start, and I will open the logger panel from our top menu. Let me kind of move it off to the side here. Move it around, resize it a little bit. And we're seeing new lines showing up in the logger panel. Let's take a minute to just talk about what each of these lines is. Each line is, in effect, an event that the logger block is receiving. And each of these lines is split up into 4 parts. At the far left, inside square brackets, we have a timestamp. And next to that, we have the logger level, which in this case is info. Other values you might see here would be warning or error, but nothing's going wrong. So all we see here is info. And next to that, we have the service name, form handler, and then the block name, .logger A. And that's so that I know where this information is coming from. Finally, at the far right, we have the generated signal itself. And we know it's a signal because it's inside these little curly brackets. And we see that every 3 seconds, matching my configuration, I'm getting a new signal that has one attribute or one field. And that field is named ID, and its value is counting between 0, 1, and 2. And that makes sense because that's what we configured. So let's think of these signals real quick as a representation of the actual application form that somebody's going to have to fill out at my local library branch in order to get a library card. Right, so when you come in, say, I would like to apply for a library card, I'm going to hand you a sheet of paper, and it's a form. On this form are a couple fields where I ask for things like your name, your date of birth, your email address, etc. Things that identify you as a patron of my library. And so you're going to fill out each of these fields on the form. Each of these fields has a title or a key, which in this case, as we see in the logger panel, is called ID. And each field has a key and a value. So in this case, the key or the title of my fields is ID, and the value is changing with every new signal. If I were doing a more thorough job of screening candidates, we would see more fields on my signals here. In addition to ID, we would see your name, your date of birth, your address, so on and so forth. But for our example today, we actually only need the one field, so we're just going to leave it like this, and that's pretty good. So what we're seeing right now is every 3 seconds, we have a new event of one signal is being handed from the counter interval simulator to our logger. And that makes sense. I mean, every 3 seconds, somebody is walking up to my application desk and they're handing me a new submitted form. Let's imagine for a moment that 3 people arrive together at the library. You know, perhaps it's a couple and their child. And these people are showing up, both the parents are going to renew their library cards and their child is applying for a new library card. So let's update the configuration of our simulator. This field here, number of signals, I'm going to update to 3. And what that means is now every interval of 3 seconds, the event to simulate is going to be 3 signals where each one has a different value for ID, and those values will be 0, 1, and 2. Allow me to show you. I saved the block configuration, and I need to restart the service for these changes to take effect. When I do, let me clear the logger here just to make it a little bit more visible. But there we go. Now we see every 3 seconds, 3 signals are being logged pretty much at the same time. These 3 signals represent, this family of 3 people filled out their applications together. They walked up to the desk. One of the parents said, "Here's my family's applications." So really, I have one event that has 3 individuals in it. Each of those individuals is described by an application form. Each application form is actually the same form, meaning it has the same fields. It needs the same information from each individual, but each individual has a different value for each of those fields. In this case, we see that as a different value for our single field of ID. Now, it's not immediately obvious from here that we're actually seeing one event of 3 signals rather than 3 signals that just happen to exist very close together. If we want to get a better idea, or if we want to visualize this more easily, we can use a block called the counter. So that's actually not installed for us already. I'm going to come over to my available tab for my blocks library, and I'm going to look for counters. So here we go. I found a basic counter. I'm going to click to install it, and it's done. It was pretty easy. So all I actually need to do with this block is install it between my simulator and my logger. We need to give it a name again. Let's call it count forms, because the job of this block is going to be to count all of the forms that are being handed in. This is the statistics that our central headquarters branch needs me to send up to them. So I create my count forms block, and I don't actually need to configure it at all. I just need to go like this. Just as our simulator and our logger blocks have an output on the simulator and an input on the logger, the counter has an input and an output. So its behavior is it's going to receive events from our simulator at the top, at the input. And what it sends out, the output, is going to be a new event that describes the event it received. So if I send it our list of 3 signals, our 3 applicants, rather than it giving me those 3 applicants, it's going to explain that it received 3 applicants. Since I've changed the block configurations, I need to save the service configuration so that the service now knows how I've connected these blocks. And when I restart it, my changes will take effect. And let's see how this looks. There we go. So now we have a new signal to look at. This signal has 3 fields on it. We're really only interested in the first 2 right now. We'll come back to group in a couple of minutes. But every 3 seconds, the counter block is receiving one event that contains 3 signals. And it's keeping track internally of how many signals it's received total over time. If I open my simulator again, and let's set this back to 1 signal, save the configuration. Again, I need to restart the service for these changes to take effect. And we can see that now the count is only 1. And similarly, cumulative count is going up by 1 every time. So let's consider for a second that at our library, we may have more than one type of application, right? I mentioned that our family of 3, we have 2 people that are renewing their library memberships and their child is applying for a new membership. Headquarters expects me to count these up individually. So it seems that before I count it, I need to split my signals. I need to split my individuals into separate groups, right? I've got people that are coming in for new memberships and renewals. So a good tool for this job is actually going to be the filter. I can come over here to the Install tab, scroll down just a little bit, and let's create a new filter. The filter's job is going to be to find the new applicants, like we saw in the flow chart earlier. So we'll give it a title, new member. Again, the title has no effect on the block's operation, but this is what I'm going to use the block to do. Click accept, it appears on our canvas over here. Take a second to look at the block. We have 1 input, like we did on our counter and our logger, but we actually have 2 outputs. And so the way that this is going to work is for every signal received, the filter configuration is going to decide, it's going to ask a question about that signal. The answer of that question has to be true or false. And if the answer is true, that signal is put into a new group and sent out the true output. And if the answer is false, it's sent out the false output. To show you what I mean, we need to look at our incoming signals. I guess actually we have to first come up with the rule by which we know that somebody is either renewing or applying for a new ID, a new library membership, I mean. And let's just imagine today that we have our 3 values for ID. Let's suppose that if your ID number is 0, that means you don't have one, therefore you must be applying for a new one. The 2 parents in this case with the ID numbers 1 and 2 are already members, and we know that because they have ID numbers. Maybe they're the founding members of our library, and that's why they have numbers 1 and 2. Whatever it is, we know that if we see the ID number equal to 0, that this is a new application. So to do that, I need to create an expression, and I'm going to tell the block configuration that I'm doing that with double curly brackets. I'm going to add a space just for padding. The white space inside double curly brackets, you'll see me adding some here as we go. It's not required, but it certainly helps keep things easy to read. So I need to take a look at each of my incoming signals, and the syntax to do that is a $. And from the incoming signal, I need to get the attribute ID. And I need to ask a question about ID. I need to know if ID is equal to 0. The way we do that is we use 2 equal signs. That asks a question, says, is the value of the incoming signal's ID attribute equal to 0? And the answer to that question can only be one of 2 things. It can only be true or false, right? There's only one number that is equal to 0, and that's 0. Everything else is going to come out the false output. I use double curly brackets again to close my expression syntax, and I can click accept to save the block configuration. I need to kind of rearrange the blocks I have on my canvas here so that this works. And if I do this, save the service configuration and restart it. A little bit of lag there. There it goes. Sorry about that, guys. Now that it has resumed, we can see that every, I suppose that's every third signal comes out true. Everything else goes out false. Maybe this is better if I set this back to 3 signals at once coming out of the simulator, right? Because we have a family showing up at the same time. Let me restart, show you this again. So yeah, there we go. Every 3 seconds, we'll see one new count coming out of true. And in fact, let's split these signal lists up just a little bit. Let's take a closer look at it. I want to create another logger here. This is the one that we're going to call logger B. Accept. Again, I don't need to configure anything in this block. I just need to connect it to the false output here. Let's take a look. So remember that the configuration of our counter interval simulator, generate ID here, is creating one event of 3 signals every 3 seconds. Each of those signals has a different value for ID. And in this filter block, we're going to put them into different logical paths. We're sending all of the ones where ID equals 0 to logger A and all of the other ones to logger B. If we look at our logger panel, we can see the logger names separating our 2 counts, or our two streams of signals. So let's remember that we need to actually count these types of applications. So let's go ahead and put this counter back in. And I also need to count how many people are renewing. So it seems to make sense that I need another counter. And what I can do is come over to my configured blocks tab, and I can drag out a copy of the same counter block. What we're seeing right here is a little warning that I am reusing a block configuration. And this is explaining to me that while I now have 2 copies of the count forms block, and they do operate independently of each other, they share a configuration. That is to say, if I open this counter configuration and change something, it's reflected in the other one as well. However, if I start my service, we can see that the 2 are completely independent. So we see that logger A received a count of 1, logger B received a count of 2, and also logger A has the same cumulative count that it did last time we ran it. It resumed where we left off. So again, these are 2 completely different blocks, but they share a configuration. This is a perfectly acceptable thing to do. You just need to be aware that if you are updating the configuration at one, you might be updating more things than you intend to. So, all right, now I have a count of each of my groups of applications. I can see that I have new applications, count 1 with a big cumulative count, and I can see my renewals being counted. But this actually isn't going to get me very far. The only way I have to tell these 2 things apart is the name of the logger that they're connected to. What I really want to do here is I want to label these. So let me make myself a little bit of extra room here. Move this up. Oops, that one didn't move right. There we go. And I'm going to come back over to my installed blocks tab. What I want to do is modify each of these signals. Right now they have some good information on them. They have the count, the cumulative count, but I need to know which one they are. So I need to modify that signal. Let me scroll down to modifier. We'll drag this out here. Let's call it label new applicants, or label new application. And open this configuration. What I am being asked to do here is add fields to the signal. So as we mentioned, the signals I see right now have 3 fields on them, 3 properties. That's going to be the count, the cumulative count, and the group. Well, I'm going to add a 4th one here. And I want that one to be called type. And I know that everything coming down this left logical path from the true output, I know that that is going to be new. So I don't need to use any expression syntax here. I'm just in saying that all signals that pass through this block are now going to have the attribute type, and its value is going to be new. Let's put this block in place. And let's make another one for our other logical path here. So this one is going to be labeled renewals. Click accept. And just like I did before, I open it up, create a field, I add type, and I want this one to be called renewal. Go ahead and put this one in line before our logger. We need to save our service configuration because I changed the arrangement of blocks here. Restart the service so my changes take effect. And now every 3 seconds, we'll see 2 counts being logged, and they actually have a helpful new type label, so I actually can see what's happening here. So this is actually pretty good. This is getting somewhere. Let's consider for a moment that this doesn't cover all cases. This works well if I only have 2 types of applications, right? I've asked a question about my incoming applications. I can only have a true or false answer. They can only be a new or a renewal. But what if someone is applying to do some volunteer work at the library or something like that? Do I need to add another filter and another counter and another modifier? At some point, we're going to run out of room, and it's going to become a little bit difficult to manage. So I think that there's a better way. We've kind of glossed over this group attribute that we've seen so far. Let's go ahead and put that to work for us. What I can do is open my counter configurations, and at the very top, we have a field called group by. What this field is going to do is going to take all of the incoming signals it receives, and before it counts them, it's going to split them into 2 groups, 2 lists of the individual types, right? So it's going to find all of the new ones, count those, and then it will find all of the renewals and count those. To make this happen, all I have to do is put the same expression that I put into my filter earlier into the group by. So again, I start with double curly brackets to say that this is an expression. My $sign references the incoming signal. I need the attribute ID from the incoming signal. And I want to know, is that ID equal to 0? Again, this question that I'm asking with the double equals only has 2 possible answers. Let's go ahead and click accept. And as I mentioned, I updated only the block on the left, but we can see the block on the right now has the same group by. But that's okay. We're only going to be using one of these blocks for right now. In fact, let's go ahead and disconnect some things. Move this out of our way here. I'm also going to move this up here. We need to get a whole lot of this stuff out of the way here. In fact, it's getting so cluttered up, I want to just remove a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to do a drag and select like that. Up at the top here, I can just remove these blocks. They do still exist, mind you. I haven't actually deleted those configurations. They're just no longer in the canvas. They're still visible over here in my configured blocks tab. I also don't need this one here. Let's get rid of it. So I save because, of course, I changed my service configuration pretty radically this time. And if I restart it, every 3 seconds, we're going to see 2 signals being logged with 2 different counts and 2 independent values for cumulative count. And now our group actually has a more helpful label. I can see true and false. That tells me if the application is new or not. If I already know that group true means it's new, that's pretty good, but it's not quite what I want. Earlier, I could see new and renew. I want that behavior back, where I can actually see what the group is rather than having to know what true or false means. Maybe another way to say that is I want to add an attribute to all of my incoming signals. I want to modify these signals on the fly so that they include the information of whether or not it's new. And I want that information to be nice and readable. So I'm going to come back over to my block library. I'm going to jump to the Available Blocks tab. I can scroll down a little bit here until I find my conditional modifier. There it is. I guess I just scroll up. Again, I just click to install. It takes only a second. And this is now ready to go. So let me drag this out. And I'm going to be using this block to label the types of my different applications. We name it label types, accept. And now I've got a new block on my canvas. So let's open up this configuration. Like we saw before with the modifier, this block is trying to add fields to all of the incoming signals. And previously, I configured those fields to have just a static value of new or renew. This block allows us to set those values based on conditions of the incoming signal. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and first create a new field. I want this new field on my signal to be called type. So of course, we're dealing with the type of the applications. And the value of type is what is going to be conditional here. To set the conditions for that value, I need to create lookups for each of my fields. Excuse me. Each lookup has 2 parts. We have a formula at the top, and we have a value. If this formula evaluates to true, or this evaluation is true, if the answer to whatever question we ask here is true, I should say, then this value is going to be applied to this attribute. So as we did before, we're going to use our same filter expression where we're asking if the ID is equal to the number 0 If it is, then I know that my type is new. If, oh, let's create another lookup here. If my ID is not equal to 0, that means the person already has an ID number, and they're actually just here to renew. We'll just call that renew. So we have new and renew are our two possible values for type. As I mentioned, we might even have a third type, right? If someone came in to volunteer, and there's some rule by which I know that they are a volunteer, but we're not actually going to do that today. I'm just demonstrating that we could keep adding more and more conditions for this attribute type. So let's go ahead and click accept to save our block configuration. Let's connect our simulator to our modifier, and I'm going to go ahead and connect the conditional modifier to the logger. Now you'll notice the counter is still connected to the logger as well, but because the input of the logger is not connected to anything, it's not receiving any signals, so it has nothing to count. It's sitting there waiting to be told about something to count, but until it actually receives something, nothing comes out of its output. So the fact that it's connected to the logger really has no effect here because it's not doing any work. So when we save and restart our service, I just want to show you what the new signals look like. So now every 3 seconds, we have 3 new signals being created. Each of those signals has the original attribute of ID that we created in our simulator block. It also has the new field type that we're assigning in the conditional modifier. So what I can do to make my group labeling more useful in my counter is I can reopen my counter configuration, and I no longer need to ask a question. I've already asked a question about my incoming signals. All I need to do is take the value that I had before. And I asked that question, I assigned the value to type. So all I need to do is just get the incoming signals attribute type and use that for my new group by. I'm going to go ahead and click accept. Again, we need to save the service configuration and restart it. And what we see here, I'm going to clear the logger. What we see here is now every 3 seconds, I'm getting 2 counts, and each one is helpfully labeled for its group in a way that I can actually make sense of it. So what we've actually done here is now we've gathered the statistics that our headquarters requested from us. And all we actually have to do with it at this point is we just need to send that off to headquarters. So to do that, let's go ahead and create a publisher. We can come over to our install blocks. I mentioned before that all of our instances, all of our services can communicate via PubKeeper. And what PubKeeper is doing is it is going to automatically create communication channels for us as we define them and secure them behind the scenes. So if I want to send information from this service to either another service or even another instance, even if that instance is on the other side of my city or the other side of the country or wherever it happens to be, all I need to do is create a publisher and define a topic that my data is going to be available on. Let me show you what I mean. Let me drag out a publisher, and we are going to call this publisher local enrollment, because all I'm putting into this is my stats about local enrollment. In fact, we could even say it's enrollment stats. Maybe that's a better name for it. This is the destination for all of my enrollment stats. So I can accept to create my new block time. Let's open its configuration. Whoops, sorry. And I need to configure a topic. This topic is how publishers and subscribers are matched up. So once I put a topic in here, and we'll just call it enrollment, all subscribers that have the same topic, enrollment, will receive all of the signals that we put into this block's input. So rather than putting our signals into the logger, where they were being displayed in the logger panel, we put them into the publisher, and now those signals are available to any subscribers with a matching topic. I don't need my logger again, so I can just delete it from my service configuration. Let's save it and restart it. And immediately, we're not seeing anything being logged, of course, because we're no longer sending our signals to a logger. We are, however, sending all of our signals to this enrollment topic. So let's capitalize on that. What I want to do first is we're going to go up 1 level. We can see the service that we've created at our north branch called form handler. If we go up another level here, we're back at the system level view for our city libraries. I want to go ahead and create another instance. This is going to be for headquarters. Again, I'm using the cloud instance. This would probably be run on a local machine, but for the sake of simplicity today, we're just going to do it this way. Let's go ahead and call it headquarters. This is central HQ. It's going to spin up our new instance for us. And here we go. Again, we're back at this familiar looking screen, ready to create a service. Now, if you remember from our flowchart from earlier, we don't actually have to do anything with this at this point. We just need to make this information available to headquarters. Maybe in a future lesson, we'll come back and do something with it. For today, our job is done if we just get it to headquarters. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new service. And we're going to call this one City Enrollment. Accept it. And now that we have our new service, I just need to start creating blocks. As I mentioned, the first thing we need to do is create a subscriber. This is where all of our local branches enrollment information will be available. So let's create a subscriber. And our topic was enrollment. Oh, you know what? Actually, this is just a name. Sorry. We're going to call this, well, we'll call it enrollment stats. That's what's coming out of here. We open its configuration, and we need to give it a matching topic for publishers, which in this case was enrollment. And as soon as I click accept, the subscriber is now able to receive information from another service and another instance, which is presumably at a completely different physical location. All communication between these two is direct, meaning it's peer-to-peer. It's also secured and encrypted. To see the effect of what we've done here, I just need to create a logger. And this is a different instance with new blocks, so let's just take a look at our configured blocks tab. You see there's only the 2 blocks I've created so far. All the blocks I created earlier live in the North Branch instance. This is a completely separate instance, even though they can communicate. Like I did before, I need to connect these two together. When I save and start my service, I should be able to open my logger panel, and right away, we will begin seeing the statistics being generated by the North Branch. If we also had a North Branch and a South Branch and a West Branch, and whichever other branches we have, we would be seeing all of their information coming here, assuming they all have the same enrollment topic. We'll deal with we'll deal with sorting out different streams of data from different instances in another lesson. But for today, this is just meant to demonstrate the ease of communication between completely physically separate systems. So we can leave this running because now headquarters is getting the data that they need. This is probably somebody else's job at this point, right? Or maybe I'm going to come back to this later to actually process this data, put it somewhere meaningful. But if I'm in charge of the libraries, I can come here, open the logger panel, and I can see the statistics about enrollment at the North Branch. So let's jump back to the North Branch instance level view here, where again we see just a single service that we've created, and we're ready to go down the other logical path of our flowchart. Let's take another look at it again. So here we see up at the top, we accepted multiple forms. We're taking multiple forms in one event, right? We have one group of 3 people turned in 3 forms. And down the left path, we've counted some statistics, and we have made those statistics available to another NEO instance, which is physically separated from this one, offers central record keeping. So now we need to look at all of our applications at our local branch and ask if they are a new enrollment. And if they are a new enrollment, we need to schedule a tour. So let's do it. I want to create a new service, and we're going to call this new service tour handler, right? Because this is what we need to do. I need to begin this service. Oh, you know, maybe I jumped ahead here. I did. Let's go back to the form handler service. And off on the left here, this is the stuff that goes to headquarters. We also want to bring back our filter from earlier. We created a filter to see if we have a new member application or not. Let's drag that out from configured blocks. We'll go ahead and we'll fork the output of conditional modifier. We'll go like this. So now everything that comes out of conditional modifier is being handed to two different blocks. It's going to this filter, it's also going to the counter. The counter is going to do its job in passing information off to headquarters. Simultaneously, we're going to be processing down this right branch here. So let's take a look at our filter evaluation, because it is still the original configuration. We no longer have to ask this question about our incoming applications. We already did that in the label types block. So all we actually have to do here, just like we did with our group by expression, is we just need to get the answer to the question that we asked earlier, which we saved in the attribute type. So click accept to save that block configuration. And now we need to do something with all of those new members, which is specifically we need to publish them. The intent here is I'm going to publish them to the tour handler service, who's going to handle the task of actually scheduling tours and getting these people to their orientation. I think probably best practice for most systems and most services is going to be to limit each service to doing only one job. So our form handler job here is doing the job of counting statistics and routing information. Our tour handler service is going to do the job of actually scheduling tours. So I just need to pass information from my form handler to my tour handler. Down at the bottom, let me grab a publisher. And we are going to call this publisher schedule tour, because all the signals that come in here, I expect, is going to be to schedule a tour. I need to assign a topic to this, and we're going to call that tours. And accept. Let's go ahead and connect that here, because only our new members need tours. Save, and let's restart this. And we can come into our tour handler service that I created a minute ago, which is still empty. So we're going to start here with a subscriber. And this new subscriber is, it's tasked with getting the applications of members that need a tour, right? So we'll call this new member tours. And we need to give this a configuration that matches the publisher, which in this case was tours. As soon as I click accept, we see at the top of the subscriber, an input appeared, or what looks like an input, this little blue dot. If I click on this blue dot, a window pops up and it shows us all of the contributing services to this. So we can see, for example, that form handler is publishing to the subscriber. So I can say, oh, that's interesting, open service. And it takes me right to that one. In addition to that, I can look at the instance level view, and we can see our two services are now connected together. And in fact, let me show you that again. Here we go. We can see that our two services are connected together, and now we have a yellow icon, a tour handler. This is telling us that the service I created is not running. It's supposed to be. By default, all services will try to run automatically, but this one hasn't been started yet. So it's giving me a little warning that the service is not running when it's supposed to be. I can click it here, and I can click start from the top if I want to make that go away. Back inside this service, we're getting our data from our new members. Let's put a logger in place and take a look at what that looks like. Again, we'll get logger A, connect our logs together. Oh, I need to restart it, of course, for those changes to take effect. Take a look at our logger. And every 3 seconds, we see all 3 signals, which actually isn't correct. I must have messed up my filter expression. Let's come back to the other service real quick. Again, I'm going to use this little dot here because I find that to be pretty convenient. So here we go. I don't need to ask just, is the type? I need to actually ask, is the type new? So as I did before, I'm using a double equal sign to ask the question, and I'm asking specifically, is the type new? By mistake, what I was asking before is just, is there a type assigned at all? And yes, all signals have a type assigned, so they were coming out of true. In this case, I want to actually say, is the type exactly equal to new? You can use single or double quotes. Just like I'm using this white space in between all of my operators, I'm going to use double quotes just for readability's sake today. Let's go ahead and accept to save the new configuration. When I restart this service, we can come back to the tour handler, take a look at our logger, And even though we haven't restarted it, our stream of information coming into subscriber is now different. Now we're only getting one signal, and it's the one signal that we expect every 3 seconds. So that's pretty good. This actually looks like maybe I could replace this logger with whatever my tool is to schedule tours. Let's say, for example, I have a tour guide on staff, and all I really need to do is I need to send this guy an email that says, hey, someone's here for a tour. Right? So I'm going to come over to my available blocks, and let's see what we have for email options. Okay, I got 2 blocks. I'm going to just generic email. Click install. Pretty easy. So, you know, I could drag this out, and I could say, get tour guide. It seems to make sense that I could just connect and save, and I would be done here. But let's actually take a closer look at what's happening. Every 3 seconds, back in our form handler service, we're generating a new group of people. This new group of people is 3 people. 2 of them are renewing their applications. 1 is getting a new application. And we're sending all the new applications through this publisher to our tour handler and then to an email. So that actually means if our group had 2 new members in it, we would send 2 emails. I would be sending my tour guide an email that says, a new person is here, come give them a tour, and then I would send them an identical email saying, this other new person is here, give them a tour. What I actually want to do is I want to send 1 email or schedule 1 tour for 2 people, right? So I would send an email that says, these 2 people are here. First things first, let's take a look at that. Let's change the rules real quick, just because our rules are arbitrary. Let's change this so that if the ID is not 0, then they are new, and if it is 0, then they're renewing. So we have the same group of 3 people, but I've switched the rules around. So now every list of 3 people, after I restart this, now, remember, I haven't saved and restarted this service, which is why we're still seeing logger here rather than emails. I just go like that, so you don't get confused. So there we go. So now we see every 3 seconds, I'm getting 2 signals here. As I said, if I just connected this into my email, basically I'm sending an email to my tour guide. I'm sending an email for each of my new members. And really, I want to put these together. I want to join them together, maybe list out all of the new members I have, and send that single email. So as I mentioned, I want to kind of join these together. Well, it just so happens that pre-installed for us is a block called join. This block is great for this application. Let me show you how to use it. Let me move this logger panel off to the side real quick, get it out of our way. And yeah. So let me go ahead and drag out a join block. And we're going to call that list IDs. Because of course each signal that comes in has a unique ID, and I want to list them all together. Of course, if these were real application forms, these would be your names, right? It would say Peter, Paul, and Mary just showed up, and Peter, Paul, and Mary need a tour. So let's open the list configuration, the list IDs configuration here, and it's asking us for a few things. Up at the top, again, we have this familiar looking group by, but we're going to skip that for right now. The real function of this block is we can take from each incoming signal, we can take the ID field and we can put it into a new field or a new key of our choosing. The default configuration here is looking for something on the incoming signal that doesn't exist. For our purposes here today, let's say that I want to get all of the IDs in our applications and put them into a new field called guess. And the best way to see how this works is just to connect it up and see how it works, of course. Save my configuration. I restart it. Now every 3 seconds, we're going to see something a little bit different. Rather than seeing our 2 signals being logged, we see 1 signal being logged that has a new attribute describing all of the guests I have. These are the guests that I have to give a tour to. So now, if I were to, say, replace my logger with my email, or maybe I have another block here that handles scheduling something on the calendar for a tour, whatever it is, I'm now only making 1 actuation. I'm scheduling 1 event, but that 1 event is dealing with multiple guests. And this is pretty much the specification that we needed to reach. Let me go ahead and get this out of here because I actually don't need it anymore. And next time this service starts, it would try to send emails. We can take a quick look at the email configuration. As of today, I'm not going to set this up, so it's not going to actually work. If we were to start it, it would just log some errors because it wouldn't be able to parse any of this information. So let's take a look at our form handler service one more time. As I mentioned earlier on, it seems reasonable that there's probably some other processes that need to be handled here. We still haven't actually done anything with these new applications, right? If I need to update a database in my local records or whatever it is I need to do there. But we don't actually need to worry about that for today. But I do want to show you how I might go about just creating another publisher so that when I'm ready to, I can come back and create a new service that is going to process my applications, put them in the database, do whatever has to be done. So I can scroll down here to my publisher, and we're going to say this is for updating records. And I can just make another fork of my signals, and this would be records. So whenever I was ready to, I could come back here, create another service for record keeping perhaps, and I could create a subscriber for things to update. It doesn't actually matter that I spelled that wrong, but I'm gonna get it right. And if we give it the same topic as we saw before, immediately it's connected to our other service. Let's go back at our north branch. Oh, that got a little weird looking, huh? There we go. That's a little bit more reasonable. So we can see that my form handler service is taking information. Today we're using a simulator. In the future there might be another simulator. There might be some input that my librarian is interacting with. There could be any number of ways to get the information into the system. For today we're just using a simulator. We're going to count some statistics from each of those, and we're going to send it up to our city enrollment service. And then on our local branch, we're also going to schedule tours for all of our new members, and we're going to update records. As we saw before, we can see this yellow icon showing that this service hasn't actually started, which is true. We can go ahead and start it, and there we go. No problems. So with this, we're actually at the end of our lesson. What we've done today is we have built a pretty decent looking system of handling applications and scheduling some customer relation activities at our local library branches. Now that we have our north branch built out, we could in fact duplicate this branch, and we could begin adding more and more branches to contribute to our statistics back at headquarters. So the central bean counters can keep track of our profit margins and everything at these branches. I mean, it's the 21st century. It's a tough time to be a library. This is dying media, to say the least. So before we open up the floor for questions, I'm going to just talk through our system one more time. Let's take a look at our flowchart. We accept forms from people just whenever that may happen. Today it's happening every 3 seconds. And we see that we have our systems, or our system is split across different machines at this dotted line. And by using PubKeeper, we're facilitating this flow down the left logical path where we can gather statistics. We're getting statistics about our applications at the edge, if you will, and we're going to send those up to our central headquarters. And we're also doing anything we need to do locally, in this case, scheduling tours to make sure that we have super happy customers and our enrollment numbers continue to go up. We built that using Neo services, and as we look at our services and our instances, we see the same flowchart, maybe a slightly different implementation of the same flowchart, except now it's functional and it's connecting real systems to real data so that we can do real work with this. So with that, I think this is a good time to open up the floor to questions. Someone is asking about how to get a local instance. That's a great question. If you go to our web portal, there is a download link. I'm assuming you've already signed up because you're in our webinar today. And if you were to configure a local instance, once you have it running locally, at your system view, you would use create a local instance, and it's going to ask you for some information so that it knows how to route to this new instance that you're creating. If you're on one of our individual licensing plans, you have a cloud instance already available to you, and local instances you're responsible for spinning up on your own. Good question. Thank you for asking. And we have another question from someone asking if they can create their own blocks. And yes, you absolutely can. The blocks that we see in the available tab here, let me open that back up real quick. The blocks we see in the available tab of our blocks library, these are Neo official blocks. You can find them at, I believe the address is blocks.niolabs.io or blocks.niolabs.com, one or the other. Oh, look at that, we even have a button right here. Oh, never mind. That just collapses. I thought that was going to take us right there. So these are all of the officially supported Neo blocks. In addition, I meant to show this earlier, we actually have help available for almost all of the blocks. All these official blocks have README that goes with them that you can access from within the designer. So here we can see what we need to know for an accelerometer chip. We can also take a look at, for example, this join block. We can open it from the question mark in the top of the block configuration. And this is pretty helpful while you're configuring your block. If you want to make sense of what these different fields mean, you can see them side by side. We do have a number of resources on docs.n.io to describe the block creation and installation process. Oh, I'm being told that this is the button I meant to click on. Yes, there it is. So from the very top here, I can click on docs if I wanted to go directly to the documentation, or I can jump over to our blocks library. And to help us navigate where we are, these are split up into different types of blocks, different categories. So for example, if I need to interact with a database, we can see we have a number of options here. Similarly, we have options for interacting with a local file system, like writing things to a CSV file. This might be what's happening up at the headquarters branch, right? They're going to take all of my branch statistics and put it into a spreadsheet so that they can make charts or, whatever it is those business guys do. All right, it looks like that'll do for questions for right now. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And once again, I want to remind you that whether you're watching this live or recorded, this intercom button is available almost anywhere you go on our website. And please use it. If you have any questions or something doesn't make sense to you or something isn't working the way it seems to be, click that button. Thanks, guys. See you next time.